Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 7. We will presentation about our group project with our group title is Project Development Management of More Housing Contractor Using Critical Path Method and Program Evaluation and Review Technique. For our group member, we have SYIFA AINI, NURUL NATASHA AFIQAH, and MOHAMAD ALIFF HAIKAL. So for the first is introduction. More housing contractor and countryside realtors are discussing the construction of the 6th home for a new development project. Countryside realtors want to construction to start in late winter or early spring and finish with 45 days to capitalize on the summer home sale season. More contractors are concerned about the potential penalty and want to ensure they can meet the deadline. Although they have made conservative estimate accounting for factors like bad weather or workforce variance. So for the problem statement, the challenge is to determine whether it is feasible to complete the construction of 6 houses within the 45-day time frame established by countryside realtors. The work will begin in the late winter or early spring and will last through the summer and autumn. Countryside realtors place a premium on on-time completion and requires contractor to include estimate completion time for each house as well as a project management network. Penalty will be imposed if the deadline was not met. The next is project objective. We have 3. The first is to identify opportunities to improve efficiency in order to reduce delay and increase overall productivity during the construction process. The second is to reduce the probability of paying penalty. The last is to determine whether it is feasible to finish constructing every house in 45 days. For the scope of the project, the main focus is on creating a project management network and streamline the construction schedule in order to ensure that each house is finished with 45 days of the project start. And then the last is contribution of project. By implementing this research case study, the research will determine which activity can be cashed out to ensure the more house contractor are complete on time. Additionally, the research will ensure the construction is complete on time to avoid more house construction paying a penalty.
The methodology of this case study are: data for the case study was collected through an online survey using Google Form. Surveys are effective tool for gathering information and insight from individuals. Google Form allow for collecting large amount of data, analyzing trend and pattern. Survey data provide valuable insight into attitude and behavior for making informed decision. The survey aims to gather information on the project's requirement, limit and time frame. It asks about the start date, building time frame and importance of completing each house within 45 days. The survey also explores penalties for not meeting the completion date and factor influencing construction time. Question assess the level of confidence in meeting the deadline and average time required for each construction action. This is the research flowchart. The start symbol represents the beginning point of process, and then we identify the research background. It helps to understand the current state of knowledge and identify any gap or areas that need further investigation. Next, problem statement. The problem statement helps researchers define and articulate the specific issue or problem they intend to address through their research. Then, we study the objective. Next, data collection. This step is to ensure that the data collected directly align with research objective. And then, we analyze the data and check in the process of slack. If latest start minus earliest start divided by latest finish minus earliest finish equal to 0, it means the activity is critical activities. If the slack is not equal to 0, it means it is non-critical activities. After we identify the critical path, then we interpret. After that, make a conclusion. And then end. The symbol of end represents the end point of process. For data analysis technique, critical path method technique were used to analyze the data and estimate completion time for each house. CPM determines the sequence of tasks that must be done in the least amount of time for project completion. It identifies the key path and estimate overall completion time based on activity dependencies and duration. Furthermore, Monte Carlo simulation, a probabilistic technique, is used to analyze uncertainties and risks on project timeline. Monte Carlo simulation provides a range of probable completion time and assesses the possibility of meeting the 45-day deadline. It incorporates factors like bad weather and workforce fluctuation and perform multiple simulation. Moreover, crashing is also used to expedite project completion. Crashing involves identifying tasks with the least possible impact of the project timeline and allocating additional resources to those tasks to accelerate their completion. This technique helps in reducing the overall project duration by analyzing the trade-off between cost and time. By utilizing crashing, more housing constructor can determine the critical tasks that can be expedited and allocated resources accordingly to meet the desired deadline. These data analysis tools help more housing contractor understand the project schedule, risk and resource requirement. The analysis aid in determining confidence level in meeting the deadline, making informed decision on penalty charge, and adjusting bids to account for risk.
Next section is data analysis and results. In this section, we apply QM for Windows software to assist us in developing per chart AON diagram for the project. For operations management, quantitative methods, or management science, QM for Windows offers mathematical analysis. It includes computation techniques for the PER or CPM, linear programming, decision analysis, transportation problem, game theory, and other issues. The visual next to me shows a network of activity on node AON to complete housing projects. From here, we can identify the calculation of slack time and determination of the critical path. Slack time is computed by subtracting latest start with earliest start. When slack time is equal to 0, then the activity is the critical path. Besides, we will further with interpretation of the analysis. Activity on node AON network is used to represent the project schedule, with nodes standing in for the various project activities and arrows indicating the order in which they should be completed. The AON network demonstrates how some activities or actions must be completed before starting others, but autonomous activities can take place simultaneously. The activities can only begin when all of the predecessor's activity have been completed. One method for determining the critical path is to compute the slack time, which is the time between an activity's latest start and earliest start time, or latest finish and earliest finish time. Every task on the critical path will have exactly 0 slack time. The project as a whole would be delayed if the activities on the critical route were to be postponed, which is why they are referred to as critical. The critical path for this project is ABEGKMQTVW with completion time of 45.84 days. To determine the probability that the company can complete a house within 45 days, we use formula Z is equal to mean minus mu divided by standard deviation. It gave us 45 minus 45.84 divided by 2.41, which is equal to minus 0.35, where the cumulative probability from Z score is 0.6368. This indicates that there is a 36.30 chances that more housing contractors will be able to complete a home within 45 days. We would advise more housing contractors to raise their bid because the likelihood of constructing a home in 45 days is 36.30%. More housing contractors have a 63.50% chance of paying penalties to countryside realtors if they don't raise their bid. The project activities that are on the more housing contractors critical paths need more of their attention. Apart from that, we will narrow down the section on discussion on improvement. By referring to this table, activity A should be crashed because it has the lowest crash cost per day, which is 1,500 ringgit. This indicates that reducing the duration of activity A will have the least impact on the project budget compared to other activities. Activity A alone cannot be crashed to improve the total project completion time. Then, we can crash activity A and Q simultaneously with total cost of 3,249 ringgit. The other activities also can be crashed, and they are shown in this table accordingly. Lastly, we can also crash activity C, E, I, and J with total cost of 80,294 ringgit, which is the highest cost among the crashing costs per day.
In conclusion, the completion date is critical for countryside realtors who require each of the 6 homes to be complete with 45 days for their marketing strategy. More housing contractor, on the other hand, has a low chance to meet of the deadline and risking fines based on the critical path analysis. It is suggested that the contractor raise a price to account for potential delay and fines. Project crashing, which involve increasing resource to reduce task duration, may be necessary to shorten the project duration, but involve additional costs. So the next is recommendation. The recommendation involves a thorough examination of the project schedule using the critical path method to identify the critical path and prioritize tasks for quicker project completion. Project crashing, a time management technique, aims to reduce project duration and cost. If the current completion time surpasses the deadline, project crashing can be used by allocating more resources to tasks to shorten their duration.